Just a reminder, I'm running a 4-week challenge called Executive Presence Under Pressure in my coaching membership this month. If you are an ambitious professional who wants to continue to grow and get promoted and have more scope and more respect from senior leaders, but you struggle under pressure to articulately communicate and be effective and drive forward your timelines and your projects and your goals, you need to come to this. This is made just for you. In this challenge, you're going to learn the 5-step framework I use with my clients to stay composed and confident when you're getting pushback, when things are not going according to plan. We're done having so much anxiety before the meeting. We're done beating ourselves up after the meeting and replaying the conversation over and over in our heads, wondering why couldn't we think of these good responses in the meeting. I'm going to teach you how do you have executive presence while we're worried, while we're struggling, why we feel like the conversation isn't going how we wanted, so that you can continue to show up as you and continue to work with those leaders to move your projects forward. This is only available for the month of August. If you want to come try it out completely free for a week, come join me. Go to lindsaylymancoaching.com/join or click the link below. Okay, let's jump into today's topic. My oldest daughter is very into volleyball and is getting pretty good at it. It is the time of year where you try out for different clubs and try to make it on different teams and decide which one you want to play with for the year. And these kids are 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and it's a pretty intense weekend. She had 3 tryouts in one day. She was exhausted by the end. It's high anxiety. The coaches are sitting there watching you and analyzing every move, along with sometimes hundreds of other girls trying out for the same team that only has a few spots open. And they tell you by the end of tryouts whether you made it or not. So it's a pretty intense, high-stakes scenario. My daughter made a couple teams, and she decided to make a decision that would really push her to grow and improve this year, which meant she was going to be switching teams from the coach she played with last year. So it was time for her to contact her old coach and let them know that she was going to be playing for a different team this year. She's 13 and rightfully so was so nervous to call her coach. She tried to convince me to let her text them, but I said, no, we don't break up with people over text. We're going to call and we're going to use our words. What she was most worried about is she knew her coach would be understanding. She knew her coach wouldn't be totally surprised by this, and she felt good in her decision. But she was most worried that she was going to fumble and sound dumb and not be able to explain herself or articulate herself very well. In my head, this was her 13-year-old version of trying to have executive presence. So many of us as adults struggle with the same thing. And why we're not calling a coach to tell them we're not choosing the team, sometimes we have to give executive updates, executive presentations, sales pitches, ideas to an audience where we are very worried about our executive presence under pressure. Think back to like a high stake presentation you had, whether that's a status update or trying to pitch some idea. What most of us do is we spend a lot of time practicing and rehearsing and creating backup decks and backup slides and trying to think through the questions ahead of time and practice our answers, which are all great things. But what happens is when you're relying on your ability to have strong executive presence based on your ability to prepare, you're going to lose every time, because we can't possibly know every scenario that may happen in that meeting. And chances are pretty high that you're going to get some sort of question or pushback, or someone's going to ask you something that you're not going to know the answer to. And if you are basing your confidence in your ability to prepare, when you hit that point where your preparation no longer is going to help you know what to do, this is where things go bad fast. We start to word vomit and give too long of an answer and not really address the question, or we kind of freeze up and don't really answer it and feel like we're a failure when we walk out of the meeting. There was a Deloitte executive presence study done in 2024 where the research showed 78% 78%, almost 80%, okay, of mid-career professionals believe that executive presence means being perfect and articulate under pressure. Yet when they also looked at this data, 89% of C-suite executives said it's being authentic under pressure. This misunderstanding is keeping qualified people from having confidence around executives under these intense pressure situations. There was also a study done in 2023 by the McKinsey Leadership Development Institute, where they did a study where they followed 500 different executives around for 5 years, and they tracked who got promoted to the C-suite versus who stayed stuck. One of the surprising things they found was technical skills, IQ, even like performance ratings were almost identical across this group, right? Remember, they're trying to track who gets promoted and who doesn't. That was not what distinguished it. One of the key differentiators was something they called authentic presence under pressure. This is not polished presentation or skills or perfect confidence, but it was their ability to genuinely be themselves and show up as themselves when stakes were high. Our brains make us think executive presence means being articulate, to the point, saying the right things, not saying the wrong things, knowing the answers to all the things, and having everyone agree and not getting pushback. But that is not what it means. That is just leading to unnecessary stress and pressure, and you will continue to struggle because that's not possible. The pressure to seem flawless makes us seem fake. People can tell when you're not being genuine and you're not being yourself. If you keep performing instead of showing up as yourself, you will continue to feel like an imposter. You are acting in a way that's not congruent with who you are and what you're comfortable with. And people are going to sense this. Strong leaders know this and understand this. Quick interruption. If you're listening to this thinking, I'll figure this out later, that's exactly why you're still stuck. You've been telling yourself after this project or once things calm down for how long now? 6 months, a year, 2? Every week you wait is another week watching less qualified people get promoted and move on while you stay exhausted and undervalued. The brutal truth? Nothing changes if nothing changes, and no one is coming to save you. It's your job to make the change. My coaching program gives you the exact tools to break this cycle in weeks, not years. You can even try it out for free. The link is in the description below. Because if you don't take action now, when will you? Next year when you're even more burned out, or when you're in a bad spot and have to find a new job? I hope not. You deserve better. Now back to the podcast. I've worked in many scenarios at Amazon in particular where I was in the room with multiple S-team members during some pretty high stake, time sensitive, urgent, confidential matters. And they would bring in different people. And it was fascinating to watch people. Naturally, they're very nervous. They're scared. They're not articulate. They're mumbling through things. They're going off on random tangents. But strong leaders know this. They know that they're intimidating. They know that people get nervous around them, and they allow people to be nervous and scared and ramble and can still gather the data and information out of it they need and try to help the other person feel calm and comfortable. In some of these scenarios I was in at Amazon, literally time was of the essence and every minute counted. And so these executives wouldn't worry about trying to get the person presenting the information to make it pretty or articulate. They were willing to work with them while they were nervous and anxious. And truthfully, once that other person realized they were allowed to be a hot mess and ramble and not know the answer, they were able to more articulately explain themselves and have more clear communication. So good leaders know you will be nervous around them. And that's okay. It's allowed. The goal is to show up and be you. So what does executive presence under pressure actually look like? At a high level, it ultimately means having strong emotional intelligence, knowing how do you be okay while you don't feel okay? How do you call the coach and talk to him while you are nervous and scared and freaking out inside? How do you still do the thing and like who you're being? It's knowing how to keep your composure when things are messy. It's being comfortable with saying, I don't know, let me find out. And not apologizing for what you don't know. Executive presence isn't always talking smoothly and articulating things. It's being able to think clearly under pressure, which you can't do if you're not managing your nervous system. It's knowing how do you trust yourself, especially at those times when you feel uncertain. It's knowing how do you create authentic engagement in any situation. People who have strong executive presence under pressure, they're comfortable with pauses and silence and thinking instead of needing to fill the silence. They ask clarifying questions and have a conversation instead of going down a rabbit hole, assuming certain things about how the conversation is going. It's admitting what they don't know and standing firm to what they do know. It's knowing how to be comfortable when other people in the room are uncomfortable. Here's a couple of examples of what executive presence might look like. Again, it's all about being authentically you. You got to know who you are. Are you the person that's long-winded and rambles on? Awesome. That's going to be part of your executive presence. Are you the kind of person that's quick to answer and doesn't think through things? Cool. That's going to be part of your executive presence. We don't want to fight against this and try to change who you are. We want to work with it. Here's an example of it outside of a work setting. Let's say you're having a really hard conversation with your partner. Instead of immediately getting defensive and defending yourself and fighting back and saying things you may not be proud that you said in an hour, having strong executive presence in that moment is saying, I need a minute to process and really think through and understand what you're saying. Here's a couple examples in a work setting. Let's say you're presenting a new idea and someone asks you like a really challenging financial question. If you don't know the answer right away, you might say, that's a really important detail I want to make sure we get right. Let me confirm the numbers and get back to you by end of day. We're not getting defensive. We're not making it mean they don't support us. We're not telling ourselves we're dumb and we should have thought through this and why don't we have the answer? We're not scrambling to try to find the answer on the fly and screw it up. We're simply just saying, yeah, that's a really important question. I want to get the numbers right. I'll follow up with you in this time frame. Maybe you're presenting a new idea to a client and they're really challenging your approach and really pushing back. Being comfortable when they're uncomfortable and having a strong executive presence might look like you asking questions in return instead of just being defensive and trying to argue with them. So you might ask a question like, help me understand your biggest concern with this so that I can make sure I address that directly, right? It's a two-way conversation. Maybe you're in a situation where leadership is really questioning your timeline and pushing back and wanting more faster. I think all of us hear that a lot. So if they're pushing back on that timeline, being comfortable with that pushback might look like you saying, yeah, I get why you're pushing back on that. Here's my thinking of the trade-offs that I see, but I'd love to know what trade-offs you see if we do change the timeline, right? We're having a discussion. We're providing more information, but we're not at war. We're not battling my timeline versus the leader's timeline. Or let's say you're presenting something and leaders in the room are really pushing against your assumptions. Instead of getting nervous and crumbling and thinking the whole thing's gone to waste, you might respond with, yeah, the assumption is critical to our model. Let me walk you through what we did to validate it, but I'd love your thoughts on what we're not thinking through. Or maybe a coworker points out an obvious problem in your strategy document in the team meeting. Instead of needing to get defensive and argue with them and push back, you know what really strong executive presence is? It's saying, you are completely right. Thank you for catching this. Let me come back to you with an update. Strong executive presence is not getting it right. It's not being perfect. It's not being articulate. It's being authentically you. This month in my coaching program, executive presence is what we are focused on. I've created a super simple framework and challenge where we are going to walk you through the 4 steps of how do you actually do this? How do you stay calm while you're nervous and freaking out? My clients that are in my membership will end this month knowing how do they have emotional intelligence when things are highly emotional under a lot of pressure. If you want to come join us and learn how do you actually do this, come join us. Go to lindsaylymancoaching.com/join. There's a link in the show notes. You can even come and try it free for a little bit. If you're struggling with executive presence, you need to come join us. I have created this challenge in a way that makes it super bite-sized because I know you're busy. You're going to easily be able to practice this and apply the tools that you learn in as little as 5 or 10 minutes a week. But it is game changer. Remember, those people that get promoted versus those that don't, one of the key differentiators is what their executive presence is under pressure. Click the link below. Come join us. I'm only offering this for the month of August. So if you're listening to this outside of August 2025, I love you, but you missed it. Come join us for the next challenge. We do something new every month. Executive presence is not about being perfect. It's about being comfortably you when it matters most. All right, y'all, you got this. We'll talk soon.